Bang! And we are back. We're at our final panel discussion. It's named Crypto Journalism Challenges to Stay Impartial in the 4.0 Industry. Our panel will discuss the importance of journalism in the crypto industry, taking into account the challenges of staying impartial in an ecosystem dominated by startups and enterprises. First, he is an experienced technology entrepreneur and the CEO of CryptoSlate, Nate Whitehill. Welcome. Next, we have software enthusiast and the managing editor at Crypto Briefing, Mitchell Moos. Next, she holds degrees in political science and classical philosophy. She is the managing editor and head of features at CoinTelegraph. Welcome, Kristina Coroner. Last but not least, our moderator, the main man behind this entire BlockDown 2020 event, the captain of the EAK Digital. Please shout out loud, wake up your neighbors, and welcome Erhan Korhaliller and all of our panelists. Erhan, take it away.
Oh, thank you, Chris. Thank you so much for having us today. This is the last panel, but it's certainly not the least. We've got, three of the most respected journalists in crypto media with us, and I'm really excited to welcome them all to BlockDown. And it's quite an interesting topic that we have with us today, right? So the panel, Crypto Journalism, Challenges to Stay Impartial in the 4.0 Industry. Interesting is a 4.0 industry. It seems to go up every year. I mean, next year might be the 5.0 industry. But anyway, so here we are. I know that some of you have had your brushes with certain crypto armies, as we like to call them. And I just kind of want to dive straight in. I can imagine it must be quite difficult to remain impartial when you have friends and enemies, and naturally people in this space are very tribal. And I do admire you all to have that kind of impartial approach. And obviously that's really, really important for your respective publications. So I just want to dive straight in. And say, how do you kind of deal with those armies? Like, I know recently, for example, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, Mitchell, but you had a problem with, I think it was a Dragon Chain army. So how did you deal with that? And how did that affect you, like, moving forward, or did it at all?
I get attacked all the time, so it's actually pretty normal. Personally, anytime that someone attacks a journalism outlet, it more gives them more attention. And since our models are built around generating publicity, it's actually a positive thing. So I would say that dealing with it, it's almost beneficial when people attack journalists, strangely enough.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And what about you, Nate? Have you ever experienced anything like this before?
I haven't had direct attacks, but I definitely have noticed when we write about particular communities. XRP community is one where it seems like a lot of the bots or the trolls in XRP community have left, but there have been times where we have written about them and gotten massively attacked on Twitter. So it's just a question of just dealing with that. I mean, it's not that big, but to consider write about particular communities.
Yeah, Chainlink is another one. So there's plenty of communities where they're extremely vocal, and they tend to be the ones with the most speculative hype around them. So the more speculation, the more tribal the community tends to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that kind of makes sense. It's people who are financially invested in these projects. And if you're an unsophisticated investor and you have a stake in this cryptocurrency project, any attack on the project is an attack at your own financial well-being. So I understand it. Like, it's not something that I blame people for attacking an outlet if we write something negative about a project that directly impacts their financial well-being.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yes. Again, hi everybody, and thank you very much for having me here tonight. I would add that maybe the most influential community in any public space is haters. So these are people who just hate everything and they usually are the most active in social media. And I think that journalists, of course, it's our job to handle this kind of attacks, but at the same time, we need to be kind of very calm and have brains that are always freezed by the ideas, because when we start to react on some attacks, that can be something that it's not the best thing to do. So I think journalism is a very responsible profession, and our biggest responsibility is actually to react openly. If we react to something internally, it's not a problem. But if we respond to this, this should be always objective, even though sometimes it's not the most easy thing to do, I would say, with all the haters, the armies, as you said, Erhan, armies behind and armies against.
Yeah,
that's absolutely the goal. I think the point is that we need to be as objective as possible. Negative other ways about a project doesn't mean that have any one particular feeling. Just means that we're trying to cover the different opinions out there, the different news that's coming in. It doesn't really matter what our opinion is as journalists. It just matters that we report the facts and then let the readers make up their minds.
And here's the whole ridiculous thing about this. Every time, for example, like on CryptoSlate, they write a negative article about Chainlink, you get attacked for it. Never do people see the positive stuff that CryptoSlate has written about them. Like people's attention spans only look at the individual instances where their projects get any sort of negative coverage, and they don't actually look at a publication as a whole. So oftentimes, I feel that CoinTelegraph, CryptoSlate, and Crypto Briefing, we've all been needlessly attacked when, if you look at it, our coverage in aggregate, we actually been pretty nonpartisan about things like Chainlink and XRP.
Yeah, and there's another funny story where one time we wrote an article about this social media project called Hive One that actually covers the social analytics of different communities. And their interpretation was that the XRP community was especially biased and hostile to everyone. So we wrote an article just covering how the XRP community tends to be hostile based off Hive One's analysis. And just from that article, we started getting attacked on Twitter and in the comments. So it just kind of validated the whole thing that, like, yeah, particular communities are particularly tribal, and it doesn't really matter what our opinion is. We're just trying to cover the analysis about anything.
Yeah, and also the funny thing is that it's not only that sometimes we are hated for something that we covered, but we are always quite often hated for something that we don't cover.
Yeah, absolutely.
How possibly can it be the truth that you didn't mention our great company today, that we had this great news? This is something that we get every day, and this is something that is part of our profession, for sure.
Yeah. Damned if you do, you're damned if you don't in crypto journalism.
Yeah. No, that's super interesting. So, I just wanted to segue off there because, so a big problem in this space is that, like, everyone's very, very quick to call things a scam. Like, if you're not invested in it, it's a scam. And that's a big problem that we find, right, is that people use the word scam too easily. Now, as, respected journalists and respected publications that you write for, I'm sure sometimes you come across stories, whether it's like a source or a random source that says this project's a scam. You have to be, obviously, I assume you have to be very careful that you don't just run an article calling something a scam, because that could potentially send the token price right to it could ruin the whole project, right? So I would really like to know your thought process when you come across something that looks like a credible story about it being a scam, and whether that makes you hesitate actually publishing it.
So one example that we wrote about Nano project probably maybe a year and a half or 2 years ago. I think, Mitchell, you were around for that time, but apparently there was a class action lawsuit against the Nano project. And I'm pretty sure you wrote that particular article, so you could probably chime in more. But something like a class action lawsuit is pretty direct evidence. Not that it's necessarily a scam, but that there's some real activity happening that obviously in the class action lawsuit, there's a lot of particular evidence and information. So that's an example where it's a source that we can then point to and say, like, look, all this stuff is happening. And we're not saying it's a scam, but this is actually something serious that people need to be aware of. Other particular sources, like if it's just, someone on Twitter saying it's something a scam, that obviously we need to, be much more careful with just one single source. But as many sources as possible is definitely the key when trying to say anything is or isn't a scam.
At least for Crypto Briefing, and I know this is true for CryptoSlate as well. I mean, we're American-based publication, so there's still a lot of defamation-related liability that we incur. So anytime we go out and say something negative about a project, we have to be pretty sure that what we're saying is, if we outright say that unmodified that a project is a scam, we better have damn good evidence that they are, like overwhelming evidence, or we better have some sort of source, like some sort of US regulatory agency saying that for us, because we don't want to necessarily take risks or go out on a limb if there's even a 5% chance that we're wrong on something that serious. Because if we send a token price, I don't know, down 50%, and it turns out that we were wrong on that, that's a huge issue, and people are actually getting materially harmed from that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think it's also a question of wording. So the name scam is something to be avoided if it's not official. And of course, sources are our gods.
Yeah, absolutely. And Mitchell, you probably could talk a little bit about what happened with the DIG project. You wrote a pretty in-depth article a while back about how lots of community members were sounding the alarm about the DIG project and how that might be a scam.
Well, they still haven't fulfilled any of their promises, and they started up a new project, and all of the founders of that project have a history of like legal or enforcement actions or bankruptcies. So, I mean, there's a lot of evidence suggesting that it is a scam, but again, I can't conclusively say because there's two things. First off, the whole notion of what are the boundaries and definition of a scam? Like if you start a company and it's just a bad business idea and it fails, is that a scam or is that just not executing properly? Like at what point is something going to be fraudulent? And at what point is it just a white paper that didn't fulfill its enormous vision that it initially had? So it's really subjective, honestly, on even what you could define as a scam. There's a lot of bad projects, but how many of them are actually fraudulent? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I would also add that I personally prefer to delve into the people's ideology behind projects. And basically without naming a project bad or good, you leave your readers to decide for themselves. A good interview with the founder or CEO of a project, in my opinion, is something that goes into the ideas behind the vision of the project. It talks about the technology that is used for the project, and it also especially talks about the vision of the future and the ideas where this project could bring the industry. And sometimes it doesn't prove to be true. And in a year, there were so many ICOs that didn't bring the ideas to the world. But it's interesting to share the ideas behind these people, even though they can be something that couldn't be called a good project. Let's call it like this. So people, talking with people, sources, always sources. Sources are our gods.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to continue on the impartiality topic, I mean, look, we're all human beings. Like we all have opinions. We all like projects, and we all don't. There's projects that we don't like, whether you like to admit it or not. It's a fact. How do you keep impartial when there's a project, for example, that you might be interviewing, or there's a founder that maybe you actually personally don't maybe rate that much. Obviously, you would never say that in public because you're professional. But how do you stay impartial in those instances, and how do you ensure that those influences around you doesn't affect your reporting?
Well, usually when we write something, and I think this is true at least for CryptoSlate, probably true for CoinTelegraph as well. It usually goes through multiple sets of eyes, like a pair of the editor who's probably unrelated to whoever initially wrote the thing, and usually goes through 2 or 3 sets of people before it actually goes to publication. So the first line of defense really is having multiple people with multiple perspectives and different input on a particular piece before it gets published. So it's not just one person, it's the whole organization working together to make sure that when a piece of content goes out, that it's objective and that it's factual, more or less.
Yes, thank you for bringing this up, Mitchell. It's definitely true for CoinTelegraph, because I think it's a part of our professional, like every professional media outlet is basically working within a journalistic ethics that is very important for any organization that is working in the space. There are authors, and it's always the editor's work to fact check, to prove that all the sources are real and they can be trusted. And then there is also, in my opinion, very important point of admitting your own mistakes sometimes. Because definitely, especially in the world of non-printed media, but online publications, we have situations when we get something wrong, and then we get some corrections from the community. And it's very important that we admit these things, that we put disclaimers when we correct the article, and admit that all people who are working can have this human mistakes that can be corrected and can be admitted.
Yeah, absolutely. For us, we also, if we get something wrong, we make sure to update the title with the word updated. So then people can read the article and see that this is the particular thing we got wrong. This is why we corrected it. This is the time that we corrected it. That's super important, I feel like, in crypto journalism, because ultimately everyone who's reading any piece of crypto news, they're gonna think that there may be some bias. The author may be holding a particular coin or shorting a particular coin. So to be as clear as possible that we're trying to be as objective as possible, and any conflict of interest is disclosed, any corrections are clearly noted. That's just super important for having trust, which I think is really the most important thing for any crypto journalist, is to build trust in the community.
Yeah. So I've actually noticed that on some publications they say, XYZ holds, Ethereum and Dash, or holds no. Some of them say they hold no crypto at all, which I find fascinating, because they write articles about crypto every single day that they haven't bought any, which I would probably question whether that's true or not. How important do you think that is that they actually put that at the end of their articles? And I'm not sure if all of you 3 publications do that, but like, do you think that's necessary, or do you think otherwise?
I think it's important to disclose it because it might bias the particular writer on a project. Like if you are a huge Chainlink maximalist and you're writing a positive article about Chainlink, you shouldn't take that too seriously. Yeah, in fact, I would say that the publication probably shouldn't let them write about, just using Chainlink as an example, Chainlink in the first place. Like if you have a large position that's disproportionate to one particular cryptocurrency, outside of like Bitcoin, that maybe like the top cryptos where it's pretty normal to have positions in all of them, or maybe just like in Bitcoin. I think that if you have some weird, 60% allocation to some random altcoin, like you should definitely disclose that.
Yeah, for CryptoSlate, we have a little checkbox on every single post that asks the author to disclose if they have a conflict of interest in anything they're writing about. So if someone's writing about Chainlink, as Mitchell said, and they hold Chainlink, they need to check that box. And then it puts a little disclaimer at the end of the article that says commitment to transparency. this author may hold or may be invested in an asset that was mentioned in the article. So yeah, we take that very seriously for every single article we write about.
Yeah, I totally agree with this. But at the same time, I think if you are not talking about some advantages of the project, well, it's the same as disclosing you have some dollars on your bank account, or you have some share from, I don't know, Amazon. I'm not sure that all the journalists are actually writing about this when they are covering Amazon news. So that's a very interesting question, Erhan. What do you think personally?
Well, what do I think? I think in an ideal scenario, I think, of course, it would be great if everyone put their holding, if they had a major position, I think it would be important. But realistically, I mean, how can you as the founder or an editor of a publication know if the journalist is even telling you what they own? I mean, you can't go through their digital wallets, can you? So, I mean, like, you can do what you can on your end, but ultimately you have to, I mean, same in PR, right? And the same in all the media, it's all built on trust. And, I guess, when you're either interviewing a potential writer or you're looking into them, I guess you go through their portfolio and, if you see any trends, then I guess that's something you can pull them up on. But ultimately, I think, you have to trust them. Of course, if they're in big positions or if they shield projects on Twitter, that's completely different. But, I mean, yeah, that would be my 2 cents. I think there's only really so much you can do in your position, but ultimately it's down to the journalist to kind of highlight, the positions that they're in if it is a major position.
And I feel that, I mean, holding the position is less problematic than just having very vocal and slanted opinions about a particular project. Like, the actual manifestation of that bias is more important than actually, I guess, having a position, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, but I think it's more in use to disclose cryptocurrencies holdings than to disclose some shares in blockchain projects, for example. That
hey guys,
should be also.
Erhan, I just wanted to let you know, I don't want to jump in on your party, but we have 7 minutes, maybe a little bit less, before Vimeo cuts the whole entire show off. So just if you can do the closing thoughts. I love you guys. Thank you very much for joining us.
You have the best hat, Chris.
Thank you very
Appreciate
much.
it.
I'm partying in virtual land and in the real physical reality as well. So Erhan, take it away. Do your thing. I'm out.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, there was one of these questions here that I really wanted to ask. So some publications may be more controversial than others, or maybe quick to go into publication. So, for example, for Binance, there was a problem with the block. I think it was like late last year where they published a story about the China raid, and Binance obviously denied it vehemently and turned it into a bit of a circus. Said they were going to sue the block. Like it turned into a crazy, crypto Twitter spat. How does that affect, you guys are obviously, in the same space as the block when other publications, when you see a spat like that, you see a publication getting sued, pulled out, how does that make you feel? And does it impact you in some way, even subconsciously, if you ever find yourself in a familiar scenario?
Yeah, this is a tough one, I think. Obviously, the publication has responsibility to get their information right. I think even there's some debate whether Binance had a Shanghai office. The block affirms that they did, and Binance says they didn't. Binance asked for an apology. I don't believe that the block has ever made an apology. We wrote pretty extensively about this spat as it happened. And it was great for page views just to cover it from a third party. But as far as I know, Binance hasn't followed through with the lawsuit, and the block has never apologized. So it's kind of something that everyone just swept under the rug. Yeah, it's a tough one. Like that was a very funny situation as it was happening in real time.
I think that the crux of the dispute went from them having an office to the use of the word raid. So the facts of the matter were that they had some sort of location, whether it's an office or not, I don't know, but Binance employees worked out of some physical location in Shanghai, and the police visited for some sort of information. That's the extent of what I think has been decided is accurate. But even though the block may have gotten things wrong, I think that the bigger issue here is that the block is very reluctant to admit when they have a mistake in terms of their publication. Like, I give them credit for going after a big organization like Binance, because it's difficult to do that without burning bridges and ruining that relationship. So it's unlikely that, for example, the block will ever get another release from Binance again. So they're making a serious trade-off, and by publishing negative news about Binance, I give them major credit for taking on that challenge. But at the same time, like I said, they seem very reluctant to admit when they have made an error. And we've seen in the past where examples of like them talking about our chain, like Vlad Zamfir's position, getting just basic things like that wrong, and then Mike will get on a pedestal and say like, I fully support my publications, 1000% accurate, and they won't admit to any wrongdoing whatsoever. So that's where I think that there's an issue.
Well, yeah, I agree. Everyone is in the industry gets traffic as he wants. But then other media also have choice whether to follow or to check, to try to contact all the involved actors, to try to get external experts' opinions. And I will repeat this once again. Sources are our gods and fact-checking is our religion. So we should never forget about our responsibility towards the readers and towards the community.
Yep. Guys, I'm going to have to jump in here because we're going to get cut off in 60 seconds. I've got one quick fire question for you three. That is, what is your favorite publication in crypto, journalism and media, apart from your own? No, you go first. Just one word.
Like their user experience. I think they have a great mix of different types of coverage, everything from price to original storytelling, long features.
Okay, Mitchell?
I mean, this is going to be a cop-out, but I think CoinDesk does a fine job.
Quick.
Gosh. Bitcoin white paper.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having us, guys. Thanks so much for having us, Chris. I'll see you three at the after party and everyone else. It's been a blast. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Erhan. Good meeting you all.
Stay safe.
Yeah.
I was still here.
Bang! And that is it. BlockDown 2020. This ain't BlockDown, or this ain't Lockdown. This is BlockDown. Thank you, everybody, for joining. This has been an incredible event. I've been in the industry forever, and I can't even believe it. Thank you very much for you guys joining. And we are going to leave this with a Sting song. Take it away.